The 12 Chairs by Ilf and Petrov, Chapter 39, The Earthquake. "What do you think, Marshal?" said Ostap as the concessionaires approached the settlement of Sioni. "How can we earn money in a dried-up spot like this?" Ippolit Matveyevich said nothing. The only occupation by which he could have kept himself going was begging, but here in the mountain spirals and ledges there was no one to beg from. Anyway, there was begging going on already, alpine begging, a special kind. Every bus and passenger car passing through the settlement was besieged by children who performed a few steps of a local folk dance to the mobile audience, after which they ran after the vehicle with shouts of "Give us money! Give money!" The passengers flung 5 kopeck pieces at them and continued on their way to the cross gap. "A noble cause," said Ostap. "No capital outlay needed. The income is small, but in our case valuable." By 2 o'clock of the second day of their journey, Ippolit Matveyevich had performed his first dance for the aerial passengers under the supervision of the smooth operator. The dance was rather like a mazurka. The passengers, drunk with the exotic beauty of the Caucasus, took it for a native lezginka and rewarded him with 3 5-kopeck bits. The next vehicle, which was a bus going from Tiflis to Vladikavkaz, was entertained by the smooth operator himself. "Give me money! Give money!" he shouted angrily. The amused passengers richly rewarded his capering about, and Ostap collected 30 kopecks from the dusty road. But the Sioni children showered their competitors with stones, and fleeing from the onslaught, the travelers made off at the double for the next village, where they spent their earnings on cheese and local flatbread. The concessionaires passed their days in this way. They passed the nights in the mountain dwellers' huts. On the 4th day they went down the hairpin bends of the road and arrived at the Kaishar Valley. The sun was shining brightly, and the partners who had been frozen to the marrow in the cross gap soon warmed up their bones again. The Daryo cliffs, the gloom and the chill of the gap gave way to the greenery and luxury of a very deep valley. The companions passed above the Yarogavia River and went down into the valley, settled by people and teeming with cattle and food. There it was possible to scrounge something, earn, or simply steal. It was the Transcaucasus. The heartened concessionaires increased their pace. In Pasanor, in that hot and thriving settlement with 2 hotels and several taverns, the friends cached some bread and lay down under the bushes opposite the Hotel France, with its garden and 2 chained-up bear cubs. They relaxed in the warmth, enjoying the tasty bread and a well-earned rest. Their rest, however, was soon disturbed by the tooting of a car horn, the slither of tires on the flinty road, and cries of merriment. The friends peeped out. 3 identical new cars were driving up to the Hotel France in line. The cars stopped without any noise. Out of the first one jumped Persitsky. He was followed by Life and the Law, smoothing down his dusty hair. Out of the other cars tumbled the members of the Lathe Automobile Club. "A halt!" cried Persitsky. "Waiter, 15 shish kebabs." The sleepy figure staggered into the Hotel France, and there came the bleating of a ram being dragged into the kitchen by the hind legs. "Do you recognize that young fellow?" asked Ostap. "He's the reporter from the Scriabin, one of those who criticized our Transparent. They've certainly arrived in style. What's it all about?" Ostap approached the kebab guzzlers and bowed to Persitsky in the most elegant fashion. "Bonjour," said the reporter. "Where have I seen you before, dear friend? Aha, I remember. The artist from the Scriabin, aren't you?" Ostap put his hand to his heart and bowed politely. Wait a moment," continued Persitsky, who had a reporter's retentive memory. "Wasn't it you who was knocked down by a cart horse in Sverdlov Square?" "That's right, and as you so neatly expressed it, I also suffered slight shock." "What are you doing here, working as an artist?" "No, I'm on a sightseeing trip." "On foot?" "Yes, on foot. The experts say a car trip along the Georgian military highway is simply ridiculous." "Not always ridiculous, my dear fellow, not always. For instance, our trip isn't exactly ridiculous. We have our own cars, I stress our own cars, collectively owned. A direct link between Moscow and Tiflis. Petrol hardly costs anything. Comfort and speed. Soft springs. Europe." "How did you come by it all?" asked Ostap enviously. "Did you win 100,000? "Not 100, but we won 50. "Gambling?" "With a bond belonging to the Automobile Club." "I see," said Ostap. "And with the money you bought the cars?" "That's right." "I see. Maybe you need a manager. I know a young man. He doesn't drink." "What sort of manager?"
"Well, you know, general management, business advice, instruction with visual aids by the complex method."
"I see what you mean. No, we don't need a manager."
"You don't?"
"Unfortunately not, nor an artist."
"In that case, let me have 10 rubles."
Avdotyan, said Persitsky, kindly give this citizen 10 rubles on my account. I don't need a receipt. This person is unaccountable.
That's extraordinarily little, observed Ostap, but I'll accept it. I realize the great difficulty of your position. Naturally, if you had won 100,000, you might have loaned me a whole 5 rubles, but you won only 50,000 rubles, 0 kopecks. In any case, many thanks.
Bender politely raised his hat. Persitsky politely raised his hat. Bender bowed most courteously. Persitsky replied with a most courteous bow. Bender waved his hand in farewell. Persitsky, sitting at the wheel, did the same. Persitsky drove off in his splendid car into the glittering distances of the company of his gay friends, while the smooth operator was left on the dusty road with his fool of a partner.
Did you see that swank?
The Transcaucasian Car Service or the private motor company, asked Ippolit Matveyevich in a businesslike way. He was now thoroughly acquainted with all types of transportation on the road. I was just about to do a dance for them.
You'll soon be completely dotty, my poor friend. How could it be the Transcaucasian Car Service? Those people have won 50,000 rubles, pussy. You saw yourself how happy they were and how much of that mechanical junk they had bought. When we find our money, we'll spend it more sensibly, won't we?
And imagining what they would buy when they became rich, the friends left Passanar. Ippolit Matveyevich vividly saw himself buying some new socks and traveling abroad. Ostap's visions were more ambitious, something between damming the Blue Nile and opening a gaming house in Riga with branches in the other Baltic states. The travelers reached Misket, the ancient capital of Georgia, on the 3rd day before lunch. Here the Kora River turned toward Tiflis. In the evening they passed the Zerno-Avchal hydroelectric station. The glass, water, and electricity all shone with different colored light. It was reflected and scattered by the fast-flowing Kora. It was here the concessionaires made friends with a peasant who gave them a lift into Tiflis on his cart. They arrived at 11 p.m., that very hour when the cool of the evening summons into the streets the citizens of the Georgian capital, limp after their sultry day.
Not a bad little town, remarked Ostap as they came out into Rustaveli Boulevard. You know, pussy.
Without finishing what he was saying, Ostap suddenly darted after a citizen, caught him up after 10 paces, and began an animated conversation with him. Then he quickly returned and poked Ippolit Matveyevich in the side.
Do you know who that is? He whispered. It's Citizen Kislovsky of the Odessa Roll Moscow Bun. Let's go and see him. However paradoxical it seems, you are now the mastermind and father of Russian democracy again. Don't forget to puff out your cheeks and wiggle your mustache. It's grown quite a bit, by the way. A hell of a piece of good luck. If he isn't good for 50 rubles, you can spit in my eye. Come on.
And indeed, a short distance away from the concessionaire stood Kislarski in a Tussar silk suit and a boater. He was a milky blue color with fright.
I think you know each other, whispered Ostap. This is the gentleman close to the Emperor, the mastermind and father of Russian democracy. Don't pay attention to his suit. That's part of our security measures. Take us somewhere right away. We've got to have a talk.
Kislarski, who had come to the Caucasus to recover from his grueling experiences in Stargorod, was completely crushed. Burbling something about a recession in the roll-bun trade, Kislarski set his old friend in a carriage with silver-plated spokes and footboards and drove them to Mount David. They went up to the top of the restaurant mountain by cable car. Tiflis slowly disappeared into the depths in 1,000 lights. The conspirators were ascending to the very stars. At the restaurant, the tables were set up on a lawn. A Caucasian band made a dull drumming noise, and a little girl did a dance between the tables of her own accord, watched happily by her parents.
Order something,
suggested Bender. The experienced Kislarski ordered wine, salad, and Georgian cheese.
And something to eat, said Ostap. If you only knew, dear Mr. Kislarski, the things that Ippolit Matveyevich and I have had to suffer, you'd be amazed at our courage.
There he goes again, thought Kislarski in dismay. Now my troubles will start all over again. Why didn't I go to the Crimea? I definitely wanted to go to the Crimea, and Henrietta advised me to go too. But he ordered 2 shish kebabs without a murmur and turned his unctuous face towards Ostap.
Here's the point, said Ostap, looking around and lowering his voice. They've been following us for 2 months and will probably ambush us tomorrow at the secret meeting place. We may have to shoot our way out.
Kislarski's cheeks turned the color of lead.
Under the circumstances, continued Ostap, we're glad to meet a loyal patriot.
Yes, said Ippolit Matveyevich proudly, remembering the hungry ardor with which he had danced the Lezginka not far from Sioni.
Yes, whispered Ostap, we're hoping with your aid to defeat the enemy. I'll give you a pistol.
There's no need, said Kislarski firmly. The next moment it was made clear that the chairman of the Stock Exchange Committee would not have the opportunity of taking part in the coming battle. He regretted it very much. He was not familiar with warfare, and it was just for this reason that he had been elected chairman of the Stock Exchange Committee. He was very much disappointed, but was prepared to offer financial assistance to save the life of the father of Russian democracy. He was himself an Octoberist.
"You're a true friend of society,"
said Ostap triumphantly, washing down the spicy kebab with Swedish Kispayani wine.
50 can save the mastermind.
"Won't 20 save the mastermind?" asked Kislarski dolefully. Ostap could not restrain himself and kicked Ippolit Matveyevich under the table in delight. "I consider that haggling," said Ippolit Matveyevich, "is somewhat out of place here." He immediately received a kick on the thigh, which meant, "Well done, pussy, that's the stuff." It was the first time in his life that Kislarski had heard the mastermind's voice. He was so overcome that he immediately handed over 50 rubles. Then he paid the bill and, leaving the friends at the table, departed with the excuse that he had a headache. Half an hour later, he dispatched a telegram to his wife in Stargorod. "Going to Crimea as you advised, stop. Prepare basket just in case." The many privations which Ostap had suffered demanded immediate compensation. That evening, the smooth operator drank himself into a stupor and practically fell out of the cable car on the way back to the hotel. The next day, he realized a long-cherished dream and bought a heavenly gray polka dot suit. It was hot wearing it, but he nevertheless did so, sweating profusely. In the TIFF Co-op men's shop, Vorobianinov was bought a white peak suit and a yachting cap with the gold insignia of some unknown yacht club. In this attire, Ippolit Matveyevich looked like an amateur admiral in the merchant navy. His figure straightened up and his gait became firmer.
"Ah," said Bender, "first rate. If I were a girl, I'd give a handsome he-man like you an 8% reduction off my usual price. No, we can certainly get around like this. Do you know how to get around, pussy?"
"Comrade Bender," Vorobianinov kept saying, "what about the chairs? We've got to find out what happened to the theater."
"Oh-ho,"
retorted Ostap, dancing with a chair in a large Moorish-style room in the Hotel Orient.
"Don't tell me how to live. I'm now evil. I have money, but I'm magnanimous. I'll give you 20 rubles and 3 days to loot the city. I'm like Suvorov. Loot the city, pussy. Enjoy yourself."
And swaying his hips, Ostap sang in quick time,
"The evening bells, how many thoughts they bring."
The friends caroused wildly for a whole week. Vorobianinov's naval uniform became covered with apple-sized wine spots of different colors. On Ostap's suit, the stain suffused into one large rainbow-like apple.
"Hi,"
said Ostap on the 8th morning, so hungover that he was reading the newspaper Dawn of the East.
"Listen, you drunken sot, to what clever people are writing in the press. Listen. Theater news. The Moscow Columbus Theater left yesterday, September 3rd, for a tour of Yalta, having completed its stay in Tiflis. The theater is planning to remain in the Crimea until the opening of the winter season in Moscow."
"What did I tell you?" said Vorobianinov.
"What did you tell me?"
snapped back Ostap. He was nevertheless embarrassed. The careless mistake was very unpleasant. Instead of ending the treasure hunt in Tiflis, they now had to move on to the Crimean Peninsula. Ostap immediately set to work. Tickets were bought to Batumi and second-class berths reserved on the SS Pestel, leaving Batumi for Odessa at 11 p.m. Moscow time on September 7th. On the night of September 10th, as the Pestel turned out to sea and set sail for Yalta without calling at Anapa on account of the gale, Ippolit Matveyevich had a dream. He dreamed he was standing in his admiral's uniform on the balcony of his house in Stargorod, while the crowd gathered below waited for him to do something. A large crane deposited a black-spotted pig at his feet. Tychon the caretaker appeared and, grabbing the pig by the hind legs, said, "Damn it, does the nymph really provide tassels?" Ippolit Matveyevich found a dagger in his hand. He stuck it into the pig's side, and jewels came pouring out of the large wound and rolled onto the cement floor. They jumped about and clattered more and more loudly. The noise finally became unbearable and terrifying. Ippolit Matveyevich was wakened by the sound of waves dashing against the porthole. They reached Yalta in calm weather on an enervating sunny morning. Having recovered from his seasickness, the marshal was standing at the prow near the ship's bell with its embossed Old Slavonic lettering. Gay Yalta had lined up its tiny stalls and floating restaurants along the shore. On the quay side there were waiting carriages with velvet-covered seats and linen awnings, motor cars and buses belonging to the Krim Kurso and Crimean Driver Societies. Brick-colored girls twirled parasols and waved kerchiefs. The friends were the first to go ashore onto the scorching embankment. At the sight of the concessionaires, a citizen in a tussore silk suit dived out of the crowd of people meeting the ship and idle onlookers and began walking quickly towards the exit to the dockyard. but too late. The smooth operator's eagle eye had quickly recognized the silken citizen.
"Wait a minute, Vorobianinov,"
cried Ostap, and he raced off at such a pace that he caught up the silken citizen about 10 feet from the exit. He returned instantly with 100 rubles.
"He wouldn't give me any more. Anyway, I didn't insist. Otherwise he won't be able to get home."
And indeed, at that very moment, Kislarski was fleeing in a bus for Sebastopol, and from there went home to Stargorod by third class. The concessionaire spent the whole day in the hotel sitting naked on the floor and every few moments running under the shower in the bathroom. But the water there was like warm, weak tea. They could not escape from the heat. It felt as though Yalta was just about to melt and flow into the sea. Towards 8 that evening, the partners struggled into their red-hot shoes, cursing all the chairs in the world, and went to the theater. The marriage was being shown. Exhausted by the heat, Stepan almost fell over while standing on his hands. Agafya ran along the wire, holding the parasol marked "I want Podkolison" in her dripping hands. All she really wanted at that moment was a drink of ice water. The audience was thirsty too. For this reason, and perhaps also because the sight of Stepan gorging a pan of hot fried eggs was revolting, the performance did not go over. The concessionaires were satisfied as soon as they saw that their chair, together with 3 new Rococo armchairs, was safe. Hiding in one of the boxes, they patiently waited for the end of the performance. It dragged on interminably. Then finally the audience left and the actors hurried away to try to cool off. The theater was empty except for the shareholders in the concession. Every living thing had hurried out into the street where fresh rain was at last falling fast.
"Follow me, pussy," ordered Ostap. "Just in case we're provincials who couldn't find the exit."
They made their way onto the stage and, striking matches, though they still collided with the hydraulic press, searched the whole stage. The smooth operator ran up a staircase into the props room.
"Up here," he called.
Waving his arms, Vorobianinov raced upstairs.
"Do you see?"
said Ostap, lighting a match. Through the darkness showed the corner of a ham's chair and part of a parasol with the word "want."
"There it is. There is our past, present, and future. Light a match, pussy, and I'll open it up."
Ostap dug into his pockets for the tools.
"Right,"
he said, reaching toward the chair.
"Another match, Marshal."
The match flared up, and then a strange thing happened. The chair gave a jump, and suddenly, before the very eyes of the amazed concessionaires, disappeared through the floor. "Mama!" cried Vorobianinov, and went flying over to the wall, although he had not the least desire to do so. The window panes came out with a crash, and the parasol with the words "I want Podkolison" flew out of the window toward the sea. Ostap lay on the floor, pinned down by sheets of cardboard. It was 14 minutes past midnight. This was the first shock of the great Crimean earthquake of 1927. A severe earthquake, wreaking untold disaster throughout the peninsula, had plucked the treasure from the hands of the concessionaires. "Comrade Bender, what's happening?" cried Ippolit Matveyevich in terror. Ostap was beside himself. The earthquake had blocked his path. It was the only time it had happened in his entire extensive practice. "What is it?" screeched Vorobianinov. Screaming, ringing, and trampling feet could be heard from the street.
"We've got to get outside immediately before the wall caves in on us. Quick, give me your hand, Softy."
They raced to the door. To their surprise, the ham's chair was lying on its back undamaged at the exit from the stage to the street. Growling like a dog, Ippolit Matveyevich seized it in a death grip. "Give me the pliers," he shouted to Bender.
"Don't be a stupid fool," gasped Ostap. "The ceiling is about to collapse and you stand there going out of your mind. Let's get out quickly."
"The pliers," snarled the crazed Vorobianinov.
"To hell with you. Perish here with your chair, then. I value my life if you don't."
With these words, Ostap ran for the door. Ippolit Matveyevich picked up the chair with a snarl and ran after him. Hardly had they reached the middle of the street when the ground heaved sickeningly under their feet. Tiles came off the roof of the theater, and the spot where the concessionaires had just been standing was strewn with the remains of the hydraulic press.
"Right, give me the chair now," said Bender coldly. "You're tired of holding it, I see."
"I won't," screeched Ippolit Matveyevich.
"What's this, mutiny aboard? Give me the chair, do you hear?"
"It's my chair," clucked Vorobianinov, drowning the weeping, shouting, and crashing on all sides.
"In that case, here's your reward, you old goat."
And Ostap hit Vorobianinov on the neck with his bronze fist. At that moment, a fire engine hurtled down the street, and in the lights of its headlamps, Ippolit Matveyevich glimpsed such a terrifying expression on Ostap's face that he instantly obeyed and gave up the chair.
"That's better," said Ostap, regaining his breath. "The mutiny has been suppressed. Now take the chair and follow me. You are responsible for the state of the chair. The chair must be preserved even if there are 10 earthquakes. Do you understand?"
"Yes." The whole night the concessionaires wandered about with the panic-stricken crowds, unable to decide like everyone else whether or not to enter the abandoned buildings and expecting new shocks. At dawn, when the terror had died down somewhat, Ostap selected a spot near which there was no wall likely to collapse or people likely to interfere, and set about opening the chair. The results of the autopsy staggered both of them. There was nothing in the chair. The effects of the ordeal of the night and morning was too much for Ippolit Matveyevich. He burst into a vicious, high-pitched cackle. Immediately after this came the third shock. The ground heaved and swallowed up the ham's chair. Its flowered pattern smiled at the sun that was rising in a dusty sky. Ippolit Matveyevich went down on all fours and, turning his haggard face to the dark purple disk of the sun, began howling. The smooth operator fainted as he listened to him. When he regained consciousness, he saw beside him Vorobyaninov's lilac-stubbled chin. Vorobyaninov was unconscious.
"At last," said Ostap, like a patient recovering from typhus, "we have a dead certainty. The last chair," at the word chair Ippolit Matveyevich stirred, "may have vanished into the goods yard of October Station, but has by no means been swallowed up by the ground. What's wrong? The hearing is continued."
Bricks came crashing down nearby. A ship's siren gave a protracted wail.